So, anywho, I'm going to talk about increasing milk supply. Milk supply is like probably the #1 worry of breastfeeding moms, whether they're new at their breastfeeding journey or 6 months into it or even a year into it sometimes. So it's a very common concern, and sometimes there isn't even a real issue with milk supply. It's just a perceived issue. It's a perceived worry that there isn't enough milk. There's a perception that there's not enough milk, when oftentimes there is. And so for the new breastfeeding moms, there's a couple ways that you can know if your baby's getting enough milk, if your milk supply is enough for your baby. And let me just say this, is oftentimes we think we should have this oversupply of milk, right? But it's really about making sure that your baby has enough milk and that your baby is satisfied with your milk supply, not that you have a freezer full of milk stashed away, or that you can pump 5 ounces every session because you've seen someone else do it on social media. So sometimes we get sidetracked with seeing what everybody else is doing and thinking that we're supposed to be doing the same thing. We're supposed to be able to produce as much that girl next door. So that's simply not the case. Just pay attention to your baby and don't worry about all that other stuff. So there's a couple ways you can know if your baby is satisfied and it's getting enough milk. And the #1 is, of course, tracking the diapers. In the early days, in the first week, you want to see at least 1 wet and 1 poopy diaper on the first day, 2 wet and 2 poopy diapers on the second day, 24 hours after birth, and then at least 3 wet and 3 poopy diapers at the end of the 3rd day. And then, assuming that your milk transitions into the mature, more abundant milk after the 3rd day, you should see at least 5 to 6 wet diapers and 3 to 4 poopy diapers. And of course you can have more than that. More is probably better. It can be better, but if you have that minimum amount, that's a good sign that things are on the right track and your body's doing what it knows how to do. And maybe I should have started off saying this, but a big part of this whole thing is just trusting your body, trusting that your body knows what to do, knowing that your body is wise and that it knows what to do. It knows how to make just the right amount of milk, and you just have to trust that and feel confident. Just feeling confident that you have enough milk for your baby. So telling yourself that if you're doubting that, or if you're worried about that, just keep talking to yourself. Just keep telling yourself, I make plentiful milk for my baby. Things like that. So knowing your baby is satisfied. Some things you can look for are, obviously, if your baby looks milk drunk after feeding. I'm sure a lot of us know what that looks like. They're just like passed out. Their whole body is limp. And sometimes you'll also see where they start off with their fists really tight and then it slowly relaxes. So once it relaxes, then that's a good sign that their belly is full, that they're full, they're satisfied. Sometimes your milk supply will fluctuate throughout the day. It's higher in the early morning and then it gets a little bit lower in the evening. And so if you notice that your baby seems to need, maybe you have to do both breasts, and maybe the baby has to feed off both breasts in the evening, or maybe even 4 breasts, left, right, left, back to left, and then right again. That's okay. That's just how the process goes as far as having your milk supply having a high point in the day and a low point in the day. So don't worry about that. Just keep putting your baby back on the breast, and usually things work out. Those are the 2 main ones. It's just looking for that milk drunk look. If your baby is feeding at least 10 minutes. Of course, when babies get older, a lot of times, they can finish in even 5 minutes flat. They're just very efficient at the breast. For the newborns, usually they need at least 10 minutes of active sucking at the breast in order to get a sufficient amount of milk. So if your baby falls asleep before 10 minutes are up, then you probably need to wake them up. And of course, this is my handy dandy boob. Of course, using breast compression, squeezing your breast while your baby is lactating is a good way to keep the baby awake long enough to finish a feeding, or long enough to feed for at least 10 minutes. So press and decompress over and over again throughout the feed. So the emptier the breasts, well, breasts never become completely empty, but the more fully you drain the breast, the more that the breast will fill up. So let's think of this cup. So if you Well, we're going to assume that it's completely filled up right now with tea. And what if I drink it down to the halfway point, right? So if I refill it, it's only going to fill up that much. It's not going to fill up this much because there's still this much tea left in the bottle. So that's a similar concept with the breasts. If the baby only drinks or only empties or only drains out half of the milk that's in there, or 30% or 10% of the milk, then your body is only going to say, oh, why waste energy trying to fill it up more than if you only took out 10%? We just need to fill it up 10%. And over time, it's like your body gets conditioned to only produce that 10% or only produce that small amount that the baby is taking out or that you're pumping out. So the idea is if you drain as much milk out of the breast at each feeding, then it conditions your body to keep filling up with a large amount of milk. Okay, so compressions help to move the milk out, empty the breast as much as possible at each feeding. Okay, and also with pumping, you definitely need to do that because you're going to remove even less milk with using the pump. Okay, so let's see. I have a feeling this is going to be a very long video, but I'm going to try to keep it brief. Other things, so let's just talk about a couple of things that you can do to increase your milk supply. So the obvious thing is frequency, right? So usually we say you got to breastfeed 8 or more times in 24, every 24 hours. Of course, if you do more than that, 8 is the minimum. If you do more than that, then you'll probably see that your milk supply increases. So if you're at 8, so you may want to just, if you're feeling like maybe your milk supply is a little low, then start tracking. See how often the baby is feeding, or if you're back at work and you're pumping at work, and then you're feeding the baby when you're home from work, then just see how often the baby's actually breastfeeding and how much you're pumping. If it's under 8 times a day, then that's probably why you're experiencing low milk supply. Everyone has their own magic number, right? So for some people it's 8 times a day, for some it's 10 times a day. And so you want to, no matter what, as much as possible, you want to try to maintain that magic number, either through breastfeeding or a combination of breastfeeding and pumping. Of course, breastfeeding is better stimulation to your milk supply than pumping. So if you can breastfeed more, then that would be ideal rather than pumping more. Okay, so frequency is the number one way to increase your milk supply. Skin to skin is another way that can help increase your milk supply. Skin to skin has been shown to increase prolactin, which is the hormone that tells your body to produce milk. So the more you do that, the more you lay baby, and you have to lay baby directly on your chest. No clothing between the two of you. No clothing on the baby, none on you. Of course, the baby can wear something on its lower half, and you can too, but you want your bare chest and the baby's bare chest touching. So if you're at the end of the day, if you're back to work at the end of the day, you're hanging out with the baby for a little while before bedtime, just do the skin to skin then. Or first thing in the morning before you're awake, and you're probably going to breastfeed the baby before you go to work, so you can do a little skin to skin before or after that early morning feed. So however you can integrate that into your daily life. Of course, if you have a newborn and you're not back to work, you can just wear your baby all day if you want. Of course, there's a lot of different baby carrying slings, and you can even make your own out of a twin sheet. Look that up on YouTube. There's all these videos that show you how to make a DIY baby carrier out of a twin sheet. It doesn't involve any cutting or sewing anything. It's really cool. So yeah, if you're home with baby, wear your baby as often as possible. Okay, so frequency, skin to skin. So let's talk about pumping. Power pumping, that's another little trick that a lot of moms find helpful to increasing their milk supply. Power pumping is basically like this. Take notes if you're interested. You want to pump for 20 minutes. So if you have this is for if you have an electric pump. It's not really, well, you could do it with a manual pump, but your hand would probably it would probably fall off after you finish. So Wouldn't recommend it for that unless you're just really hardcore. But if you have an electric pump, you can do this. Usually you would do this with a double electric because it would take a lot longer if you had a single electric pump. So anyway, what you want to do is you want to pump for 20 minutes, right? And then you want to take a break for 10 minutes. Pump for 10 minutes, break for 10 minutes. Pump for 10 minutes, break for 10 minutes. Done. Okay, that takes about 60 minutes. You have to actually take the flanges off when you're taking that break. You can't just leave them sitting there and just turn the pump off. You have to actually take them off. Okay, so it's 20, pump 20, break 10, pump 10, break 10, pump 10, break 10. Done. Okay, I guess this is something where every time you take it off and put it back on, it tricks your body into thinking, okay, so this is this additional pumping session. It's not just one big long session. It's like you're doing 3 or 4 pumping sessions. So you want to do that once or twice a day for at least 3 days before you actually see a change, see an increase in milk supply. So it's worth a try, but you have to try it for, like I said, at least 3-4 days. But don't think that this is a way of getting out of pumping or breastfeeding the rest of the day. So you're going to do this in addition to your normal breastfeeding and breastfeeding and pumping session. So if you're already pumping and breastfeeding 8 times a day, then you add that on top. You add the power pumping on top of that once or twice a day. Okay? And then, so let's just talk quickly about just pumping in general and how you can make that a more effective process. Because sometimes when moms go back to work, and even if they are pumping at work regularly, maybe they're pumping every 2 or 3 hours at work, they still find that their milk supply seems to decrease. And it's mainly because the pump isn't your baby. Like, it's less stimulation to your hormones, to your oxytocin levels and your prolactin levels. So your body realizes that, and it just doesn't get that stimulation that it needs. And then the other thing is that when you're pumping, you're not emptying the breast as well as when the baby is feeding. So as far as emptying the breast, we talked about compressions. Before you pump, what you can do is massage the breasts. Go around and just massage your breast for 2 or 3 minutes. Just, go around that. You can also, do like light feather movements. This also will stimulate your milk ejection reflex, or the letdown of the milk. Okay. And yeah, so you want to do that beforehand, before you're pumping. And then while you're pumping, another technique that you can use, instead of just having, so if you have a double electric pump, if you can get your hands on a hands-free bra, then that is ideal. So you can either make your own. You can take an old sports bra, cut little holes for the flanges to fit through. It has to be a sports bra that's tight enough to hold the flanges in place while you're pumping. But that's a cheap DIY way to do it. Or you can buy one, and they range from $20 to $40. You can get them on Amazon. Lots of places have them. So you want to get one of those, especially if you're pumping, if you're back to work and you're pumping regularly. It's just an investment you need to make. Or like I said, you can make your own out of an old sports bra. Or buy a cheap sports bra somewhere and then just cut little holes in it. You need to do that so that you can do the compressions. You can use your hands. Have your hands free to compress each breast. So you can start on this side and then go on this side and use both hands. If you don't have a hands-free bra, another thing that you can do is you start off double pumping, okay? And you double pump for 10 minutes, okay? Then you take one of the pumps, you basically want to convert your double pump to a single pump, so that you can pump each breast by themselves. Start off, you want to double pump for 10 minutes, and then single pump each breast for 5 minutes. And during that 5 minutes, you want to compress, right? Okay. So you'll probably use one hand to hold the flange in place, and then use the other hand to compress. So that takes in total about 20 minutes. Okay. Another thing that you can do these are just a couple other tricks that you can use to get that last little bit get as much milk out as possible. You can stop like halfway between your pumping sessions. So even if you're doing the hands-free way with 15-20 minutes with the hands-free, stop at the 10-minute mark and shake your breasts. Just go. That kind of helps loosen things up, and then go back to pumping. Okay. You do the same if you're doing if you're not using the hands-free bra. After you double pump for 10 minutes, shake your breasts, and then do the single pumping on each side for 5 minutes. Another thing you can do while you're taking that break, you can shake and then lift your arm. I've heard moms say when you raise your arm, somehow it helps some extra little pocket of milk, and it might be something like in this area under the armpit or whatever. It makes that extra pocket come down, and so that your pump can access it. Is that cool or what? So, hey, your mileage might vary, but hey, it's worth a try. And then another thing that can also help, some people, their bodies respond well to pumps, others don't. Maybe your body just doesn't really release the milk. You don't get a strong letdown. I found for myself that if I would twiddle my nipple before I started, just go like that, twiddle it a little bit, that would stimulate the milk ejection reflex. And your hands are, like, your body responds better to your hands because they're live human things. So you may want to even do that right before you put the pump on, just to get a strong letdown. But also after you finish pumping, you can hand express. Okay, so I'm going to just show you real quick how to hand express. Okay, so you want to take your hand like in a C formation, flip it, and you want to place your fingers about an inch outside of the areola. Okay, the areola is the dark part, so about an inch outside of there. So my thumb is here, the index finger's there. And what you want to do, you want to use the other hand to support your breasts. And so what you want to do is push in, push towards your back, and then squeeze forward. Push in. This is a very firm breast, not like mine, so it's hard to really push in. And then when you squeeze, of course, you're not going to squeeze all the way towards the tip because you don't really want to irritate the tip of your nipple. So your fingers start here, push back, and then squeeze and pull forward. Okay, but your fingers should stay on the areola when you're pulling and squeezing forward, not on the nipple. Push, push back, squeeze, and relax. Push back, squeeze, and relax. Push back, squeeze, and relax. And you got to put some oomph into it. Don't be all gentle, like, put some oomph into it, okay? And then you can move your hands around so you can access all these ducts, because all the milk ducts are all around the breast. So turn your hand a quarter, push in, push back, squeeze, and relax. Push back, squeeze, and relax. Push back, squeeze, and relax. You can even go up here. This might be a little harder. Push back, squeeze, and relax. Like I said, this is a very firm breast, so I can't really do it on that side. But you definitely want to do this side and that side. And if you're ambidextrous and you can use your other hand, you can do it on this side too. Push back, squeeze, and relax. Push back, squeeze, and relax. Okay? So of course, both sides. And if you get tired of doing one side, you can do 5 minutes on this side and then go over on this side so you don't get too bored. 5 minutes on the other side. And maybe 5, if you're pumped before that, maybe 5 minutes on each side is enough to just get the last little bit out. And so I'm just going to briefly mention some other things, because I think that a lot of times we focus on the other things like the herbs and teas and everything. But the main thing that has a big impact on your milk supply is the amount of stimulation, either breastfeeding or pumping. So that's what you should focus on, increasing the frequency, increasing the effectiveness of pumping, how much milk you're able to drain out at each pumping session. That will go a lot farther than just throwing some pills down your throat. But you want to give it a good try for at least 3-4 days before you decide that it's not working. Okay, use 3-4 days of increasing the frequency of stimulation and changing your pumping habits will make a big difference in your milk supply. I also suggest to moms, especially if you are back to work and you're pumping at work and all that, during the weekends you can, if you have a hard time pumping during the weekends, make up for it by just hanging out with the baby. And they call it a nurse-in, doing a nurse-in, where you just hang out. Just if you have other kids and you have to take care of them as well, maybe try to get other people involved, your partner, grandparents, and say, hey, can you hang out with the kids for the day? I want to just focus on the baby and just really focus on breastfeeding. So just try to plan ahead and spend a day, if you can spend a day just hanging out in the bed. And I think part of it is just you being able to relax and relieve some stress. I'll relax your body and help your milk to flow a little bit better. But that obviously the extra stimulation of having the baby having easy access to the breast and nursing on demand as much as possible, as much as the baby wants, also helps. So if you can do that, if you can take a day or if you can take a whole weekend and just have a nurse in with the baby and have somebody bring you food, and you plan ahead to do that, but that can also help to get things back on track.